Hello and welcome. I'm Pallavi Ghosh, and this week on One Take, I come to you from what's also called the Devbhoomi or Himachal Pradesh. That's because the Prime Minister kind of wrapped up his 8 years in power with his speech over here. And there's a reason why Himachal Pradesh matters to the Prime Minister, because remember, he was in charge of the organization from this state, which has come in handy as far as the BJP's politics in present time is concerned. We are also looking at a time when people are talking about uniform civil code. For example, the Uttarakhand government has already initiating the proceedings to bring about a resolution to pass a uniform civil code, and similar kind of a sentiment has been also expressed by the Himachal Pradesh Chief Minister as well. So uniform civil code is expected to be one of the biggest electoral calling cards of the BJP for the 2024 Lok Sabha elections. But why just a uniform civil code? There's plenty which is happening around us, and that's what I'm going to be focusing on this week. It's slightly controversial, it is slightly an emotive issue, and this has something which has divided our political narrative in many ways. Political parties are cagey, political parties are apprehensive, and political parties are very scared often to take a stand on this particular issue. I'm talking in the context of, for example, the survey which is being carried on in the Gyanvapi mosque. There are similar mandirs which are being spoken about, whether it's in Kashi, of course, whether it's in Mathura, Vrindavan, so on and so forth. We also spoke about the excavation proceedings as far as the Qutub Minar is concerned, and the matter is of course already in court. But not just in North, in South also similar sentiments are being echoed. And therefore my question this week is that are we going to see this polarizing narrative build up for the 2024 Lok Sabha elections? Will this whole Hindu versus Muslim narrative be a part of a well-orchestrated political strategy of not just the BJP but of the other political parties as well, whether we are talking about the Trinamool Congress, the Samajwadi Party, and of course Owaisi as well? Now, my sense and my hunch is yes. And there's a reason behind it. If we just go back to the Babri Masjid days as well, and how this was always used by the BJP and many other political parties to set a political tone. But in recent times, if there has been one issue which has divided the politics, which has also made the political opponents of the BJP very apprehensive about taking a stand, it of course but naturally has been the Ram Mandir issue. Well, we are expecting that the mandir is going to be completed soon, very close to the next Lok Sabha elections, and it's bound to be a part of the political narrative, not just of the BJP, which is going to take credit, but also of, say, the Samajwadi Party, to a certain extent the Congress Party at the national level, of course the Shiv Sena and the AIMIM. So to that extent, this Hindu versus Muslim, the Mandir Masjid issue is expected to be a big issue. Now, what is the reasoning of the BJP behind this? Now, look, as terms of political strategy of the BJP, they are looking also at those states or at a narrative where they did not win seats last time round, where the advantage went to their political opponents, who are also now trying to cobble up an anti-NDA front at the national level. So we are talking about either the Mamata Banerjee factor, the Aam Aadmi Party factor, the KCR factor, so on and so forth. But where does the BJP fit in all of this? Well, the calculation of the BJP's top brass is that in states where it did very well last time round the Lok Sabha elections, this time round perhaps there could be an anti-incumbency, or maybe a number of seats goes down less. But more than that, the BJP is looking at increasing the numbers more than last time round. How can they do so? Not just by bettering the performance in the states where already that they've done well, but also in states where, as I said, their political opponents have done well, which is why the focus is on down south, which is why the focus is also on states, say, in the eastern region or also in the western region as well. And this is where the political narrative of the Uniform Civil Code comes in, the whole Hindu versus Muslim narrative also comes in, and of course the whole Mandir Masjid factor comes in. But the Prime Minister or the BJP is now looking at a larger national narrative, and for want of any other better word to use, it's all about talking about a Hindu Rashtra. You just have to go through the social media timeline, the political narrative, or the statements which often come in from the BJP leaders. All of them talk about the fact that the Hindu khatre mein hai, how the Hindus are under threat, how our culture, our Sanskriti has never ever been acknowledged or been propped up. How because political parties or those who were in power at the center before the BJP, and here of course the fingers are being pointed at the UPA, have usually been caught in this whole narrative of appeasing the minorities, of trying to be secular, and therefore India's culture, India's ethos. In some cases, BJP leaders are also saying that many of the mandirs are also khatre mein, and that is where this survey at the Gyanvapi mosque actually comes in. If you remember the outrage which we saw on the social media and also the statements which came in from the many of the BJP leaders, it was about the fact that how the Hindu faith was being insulted, it was being humiliated by a particular section of a religious community. It has evoked very, very strong reaction, and that's the reaction which the BJP hopes to capitalize. There's no doubt that India is a Hindu majority country, and when you talk about a Hindu Rashtra, when you talk about a government which is actually going to protect the rights of the majority while taking care of the minorities, it's not going to be us versus them. It's not going to be a divide. That's what the BJP leaders are saying. They're going to talk about a truly progressive kind of a policy as far as the minorities are concerned, which is why the Prime Minister repeatedly talks about, say, a triple talaq or empowerment, education of the Muslim minority, how even the madrasas need to be modernized. But in all of this, behind that, there is their plan to actually develop the Hindu Rashtra concept. How the large majority of India has very often been forced to maintain a silence or not being able to take a stand, and often in some cases, to use the words of the BJP leaders, being victimized and being targeted. What the BJP's calculation and what the sources tell me is that they hope to tap at least an increase of 20 to 25% of the vote bank. Yes, that's the amount that they're hoping to tap, not just in the north but also in the south, east, west, all of these factors. And therefore, I travelled to Guwahati, for example, recently, and I saw that not just the Kamakhya Mandir, but many other areas around the area, a Shiv statue, for example, all of them are being built up as a huge tourist spot. The whole idea is to develop these places so as to reach out to that kind of a Hindu narrative of the majority of the people in our country. And therefore, this Hindu Rashtra concept is something which is going to be increasingly pushed by the BJP. And in doing so, in the next few days and in the run-up to 2024 elections, if you think that there is going to be an abating of this narrative, is certainly not going to be happening. The road hasn't stopped at Ram Mandir. It's actually now, if you listen to the words coming in from the Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath, he talks about Mathura, he talks about Vrindavan, they're talking about Gujarat, they're talking about Dwarkadish, so on and so forth. You know, many of the BJP leaders also talk about how the Mughals invaded our culture, how they destroyed our culture. There's a narrative which is also being deliberately built up there. This is as far as the BJP goes. But before I start wrapping up and get your reactions on the social media timeline, what about the other political parties? Well, mum's the word. Parties like the Congress are being very careful. Samajwadi Party, the Trinamool Congress are a little bit more forthright because their large vote bank chunk also comes in from the minorities. But if anyone is going to use this Mandir versus Mandir narrative to their advantage, it's but naturally Owaisi, because that's where his hardcore, in fact his only core vote bank lies, and therefore he's also going to keep the pot boiling, this issue alive. Shiv Sena, which has often been accused of being an anti-Hindu party, is also going to jump into the fray. So in the run-up to 2024, I don't see a let-up in this kind of a narrative. Do give your reactions on the social media timeline on whether you think that what I'm saying is essentially what's going to happen, and whether this can actually be a powerful vote bank, and how is it that the BJP is going to have a balancing act on both of them. Thank you so much for watching.